Hi Dixons, I'm James Dyke, Trust Leader for Instruction and for English, and today we're at the brilliant Dixons Unity Academy in Leeds. In the previous video, we started to explore subject coaching, a coaching conversation centred around subject, domain-specific expertise. Today, we are going to explore how to use the prepare and probe phase of the coaching model to support a teacher to develop their expertise. Before the coaching session, the coach and coachee will have intellectually prepared, bringing with them to the session a no-show chart and, if requested, an exemplar response. See the previous video for examples of these and the full definitions about what they are and aren't. The aim on the part of the coach to begin with is to probe and secure understanding in the coachee what the learning purpose of the lesson is through the no-show chart. Let's see an example of what that might look like.
I know we've prepared a no-show chat before our coaching session, so shall we get those ready now and just compare what the students need to know to answer this question, but also how we want that to be shown. So shall we spar with those now and just kind of look at what we've got for that? So is there anything that you have that I don't, or is there anything that I have that you maybe don't have? So in the knowledge column.
So I think we've both got that they need to know exam technique.
Yeah.
And different methods, so language and structure.
Yep.
I didn't have down about the context, the 19th century context.
Do you want to add that in then? Because we know students will probably need a little bit of knowledge around the 19th century just to understand the text really well in this particular question. And then obviously, you've got your methods or your language, that's absolutely fine. And then another thing just to consider is that knowledge of comparative language. So just making sure we've got that on there as well, because we know that students will have to be able to compare text A and B. So we'll need that prior knowledge of what words to use in order to do that. Lovely. And then in terms of show, this is what we want students to be able to demonstrate with that knowledge in the lesson. And this might be a little bit more procedural knowledge. So what did we say there? Have we got anything missing here? So I've got the ability to compare or write a comparative sentence. I can see you've got comparison. What are the students going to need to use and be able to embed?
Yeah, quotations.
Quotations need to be in there, so you've got those. Yeah, so you've said judicious, which is quite a nice thing to add in there. So we want top students to be really pulling apart the quotes and making them really small and judicious. I'm just seeing that you have got the ability to write about what the writer uses, so being led by the writer. Now you've said analysis, and that's where we're going to get most of our marks. I agree. But we're going to need to maybe break that up. So what would you expect analysis to maybe look like in a student's piece of work? Is there several stages to it maybe?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd sort of expect them to be able to sort of explain the quotation and then to be able to delve a bit deeper into it with some reference to methods as well.
Perfect. So I think it's important we make sure that's really, really explicit so that when we plan and we sort of model students, we know those different stages, because chances are we all need to show students those stages. So I, for example, said explanation of how the quotation maybe proves the viewpoint.
Yeah.
But then also the ability to analyse why certain language is used is probably the next step there.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss that a little bit further shortly, because that's probably going to be quite a tricky section for the students. And then another potential one is some analysis might involve effect on the reader. So it might be worth adding something to do with how the students write about what's the impact on the reader with that quotation as well. So it's almost like there might be 3 layers to our analysis, and we need to be able to explicitly see and show students where those things are.
Clip. Firstly, there is a sparring of no-show charts. This is a supportive comparison or debate between two parties around what they would expect students to need to know and show in the lesson. In this case, notice how the coach identifies a weak point in the show section, leading to the sharing of expertise around how to break up analysis into more tangible pieces of procedural knowledge. Here, the coach's job is to draw upon their own experience and expertise to build that of the coachee, who may not have come to that conclusion themselves. During this process, several things could occur. If the coachee is mostly accurate in their no-show, further probing can occur to excavate the depth of understanding of those things. However, the no-show chart could unearth misconceptions about the content being taught that the coach can address before the teaching occurs. It could be that the formulation of a no-show chart is, in and of itself, high leverage coaching for a developing teacher. Next, expertise should be developed through the use of the exemplar, the outcome of excellence expected in the lesson. There are 2 ways to approach this. One is to ask the coachee to come prepared with an exemplar pre-written. The other is to write it live during the coaching session itself. Either can prove incredibly powerful expertise builders. Let's watch a clip where we will see sparring once more, this time around the exemplar response. The goal here is to compare the quality of the exemplar, check the contents of the no-show chart are present, and highlight the productive struggle, the point at which students may face the most complex concept or process.
Okay, shall we just compare our exemplars now? And we'll just check that we've used our word walls and that we've got those important comparisons in there, but also we've done what we've said needs to be in there from the no-show. So I can see from yours here that we've got that knowledge of viewpoint coming through, and that is compared in your opening sentence. I think that's quite a strong start. I can see you've used judicious quotations. Have you broken up your analysis? Do you want to just show me where the analysis is broken up in your response there, just like we said in the show?
Yeah. So I've signposted there using the phrase which implies, so that they're explaining the quotation.
Good.
And I've referred to methods here. And then in this section here, I've analysed language a little bit deeper and then gone into my effect on the reader.
Lovely. And I think in our word wall, we've got words like reveals and highlights and emphasises, which might be worth looking at there with your analytical verbs. So that might be really useful. Good. Now, if we're thinking about when we're teaching our students this for the first time, what is going to be the thing that they find the most challenging? So we need to find where the productive struggle is. And the productive struggle is simply what is the most sophisticated bit of thinking students will have to do in order to succeed at this particular piece of learning. So whereabouts in our exemplar do we think that sits? Where's the productive struggle, in your opinion?
I think definitely for my class it is going to be the analysis. I think they can draw out the viewpoint and the attitude from the reader, but the thing they really struggle with is then going into the language and picking out how they know that that's the attitude.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a really common, partly a misconception in English, where students might make overly brief comments or maybe not comment on the language in enough depth, and that's often a limiting factor for a lot of students. So that's probably going to be the thing they find the most challenging. Where are they going to encounter that first? Will it be when they're writing the paragraphs, or will it be maybe before then?
I think probably before then. They'll be able to pick out the quotation, but I think some of them are going to find it hard to put into writing why they've picked it out.
Yeah, so it could be maybe when you're simply annotating the text. It might be when you're annotating with students that you need to maybe make those steps explicit and help unpick that. Maybe it's when you are simply getting the class to discuss why a quotation is like that before you then write about it. So when we have a go at practice shortly, what we'll do is we'll focus on this productive struggle.
Yeah.
This is the area which we are going to really sort of zone in on. So we might say we're going to stamp this area and focus in on it.
As you can see, the coach and coachee engage in a rigorous discussion around the quality of response that will be expected from students in the lesson. What is crucial is that the coach is able to unpick and elucidate the decisions made by the coachee, really getting them to share their knowledge and thinking aloud. Also notice how there are opportunities for the coach to engage in the exploration of common student misconceptions, something that they will want to mitigate against when teaching this particular topic for the first time. Finally, the coach asks the coachee to reflect on what the most challenging aspect of the exemplar is for students, and this will help frame the focus of instruction in the rest of the coaching session. Finally, the exemplar is used to formulate potential student gaps. Anticipating the gap involves planning for student understanding and misunderstanding in the class before the event so that the teacher can plan for adaptivity throughout. Let's see a short example of that in action.
Before we have got modelling it and practicing it, shall we just think about our class? So we've got our student sort of board here. We're going to just think about which students would be furthest off and what that would look like. So as a teacher, you want to go into that lesson thinking, I'm expecting students to find this particular thing hard.
Yeah.
And I know what that looks like in different guises. And you also will have an idea of what students are going to be the ones that you might have to go to and check with because you know your class really well. So if we're talking about the furthest off response, the student who is the furthest off this exemplar, what would that look like first of all? So what might that look like in practice?
I think it's going to just be a very brief sort of statement about the writer's attitude.
Yeah, so a brief statement Anything else?
They might sort of tie in a quote. It might not necessarily be the best chosen quote, but I think most of them would be able to pick out a quote with their statement.
Yeah, I agree. So you're not really getting to the meat of the answer, but they're able to identify the viewpoint, maybe include a backup quotation to back that up. Which students have you got in mind who might be finding that in that stage in your group?
Here, the coach places emphasis on how the quality of student response might differ. Not because we expect less of some students, but because we need to adapt instruction to support all students to reach excellence. This involves exploration of the following criteria. Which students will be furthest off the exemplar? Which will be partially correct? Almost there? And finally, which are stretchable? Which might need pushing further on? In the next episode in this mini-series, we will explore other aspects of the subject coaching model and how these can be leveraged to develop expertise in others. Many thanks for watching.